Okay, so this one is about the nature of attack. And the reason I want to talk about the nature of attack is, obviously, with the war between Russia and Ukraine going on, it's a topic that's in everyone's awareness at the moment, and the response the world's had is to condemn Russia, and rightly so. But no one can really wrap their head around why. Why is Russia attacking Ukraine? And I don't really understand the reasons why. I've seen what's in the mainstream media, and I've looked a bit into the history of these two countries and how they came into being, and I've learned some interesting facts about the gas pipeline and the treaty that was in place, and I learnt things I didn't know about, that Russia was never meant to be charged, based on the treaty that was formed, for that gas, and now they're paying billions in tariffs. And I'm not saying this to justify the attack at all. Nonetheless, there's nothing happens without a reason, but it's about understanding the reason why. And so this is what I want to talk about today, is the nature of attack. Why do we attack? And when is it justifiable? And some of you will be saying, well, attacking is never justified. But unfortunately, attack is nature. It's part of nature. And it's a very prevalent part of nature. And it's an essential part of nature, especially, in the animal kingdom, where the capability and the capacity for a species to thrive is dependent upon how efficient and they are at attacking. And so if you look to nature tells us that what justifies attack in nature, and it's always survival. If a lion wants to survive, it has to be able to attack a gazelle in order to survive. And in some cases in nature, we see attack as a form of defense, where if attack without attack, it's almost like preventative. By attacking now, it will prevent me from having to defend myself later. It will prevent me from having to be vulnerable later. And this is the point where I want to bring it into human beings. So why attack? So to survive, or to prevent becoming vulnerable at a later point. So in one way, shape or form, the Russia is feeling vulnerable, or can see the potential to become vulnerable in future, and is therefore mitigating that. It's attempting to prevent a future moment within which it can become vulnerable. And human beings, we do this in our life all the time. When people lash out, you could be having an argument, or you could just be having a discussion, and someone wants to, and for all of a sudden, someone lashes out in a hurtful way, in an attacking way. And we think to ourselves, why has that person done that? And it's so that the person doesn't have to be vulnerable. It's a preventative mechanism. It's preventing us from having to become vulnerable in some future moment. And so it's always going to be the result of questioning that is probing. So if you're having a conversation with someone and you're asking them questions and then all of a sudden they lash out and you don't understand why, it's because you're probing them for some truth that they're not feeling safe or comfortable to reveal to you. And, many people believe that they're entitled to the truth. And within the personal development community or industry, there's a huge emphasis and focus on truth. What's your truth? What's your personal truth? Reveal the truth. Speak the truth. Truth, truth, truth. But understand that truth requires vulnerability. And no aspect of nature will be vulnerable, will allow itself to become vulnerable unless it feels safe, unless it feels there's no threat. And this is inherent in absolutely every aspect of nature, even at a cellular level. And, this is where I want to bring a little bit of science into it. Even at an atomic level, when we look at chemistry and we say that one substance is attacking another, what we're saying is that it is attacking a particular bond. So let's say there's one element and it's bonded to another element. Something else is attacking the bond that's bonding them together. And so if we ask ourselves, what is the purpose of, and it's called an attack in chemistry, we're saying that this is attacking, this is being attacked. And it's always for the purpose of dissolving a bond. Dissolving a bond between two different atoms. And what happens when that bond is dissolved is the purpose of it is to create instability or to create some form of separation. And this is why it's so important to look at it holistically, because you don't look at this process in isolation. The reason why attack is essential is for the process of reconstitution of matter. Now, when we see elements in our reality changing state, going from solid into gas, or whichever state of matter it is, it doesn't matter because what's actually happening is the atoms are reconstituting themselves. So the bonds between atoms are being attacked so that those bonds are then dissolved. Once those bonds are dissolved, the atoms can reconstitute themselves, meaning they can bond to form other forms of matter. And so, you could have three different elements together in one bond, forming one molecule. Then all of those bonds are attacked, and then they become individual base elements again. And then that frees them to make new bonds with other elements to form something else. So it's a process of liberation. And so whenever at an atomic level, when a bond is being attacked, it's for the purpose of dissolving a bond that has become an impediment to adaptation, evolution, expansion, whatever it may be. Now, unless that attack happens, without that attack, the bond will remain there forever and it will remain stagnant. And so we have to look at this aspect of our reality and incorporate it and understand it. And so if we bring this into a scenario where there's a war, someone's being attacked. Well, currently there are bonds between the Ukraine and Russia. They're bonded by a very important and historical treaty. And there'll be countless other bonds between the two nations to do with trade, tariffs, taxation. There'll be countless examples of formal bonds between those two nations. Now, if one of those nations feels as though those bonds, any one of them or all of them, are impeding the capability or the capacity for to be able to evolve and grow and expand or even survive, and those bonds were made and those agreements were formed, but let's say the environment's changed and those bonds are now an impediment. They're now preventing growth and expansion. And this is where a lot of people would say, with human nature, well, you have to have integrity. You made an agreement, you have to stick to it. You made a bond, you have to stick to it. It's the law. It's the law. You made a contract. You gave me your word, and your word is your bond. And that's a very human thing to say, because nature doesn't give a shit about that. Nature doesn't look at history. Nature is in the present. And nature says it doesn't matter why that bond was made. It doesn't matter why that bond exists. All that matters is that in this now moment, this bond is preventing me from becoming more. In this now moment, this bond is preventing me from realizing greater potential of what I can become. In this now moment, this bond is preventing me from surviving. In this now moment, this bond, the fact that it exists, means that I am vulnerable. I will become vulnerable in future. And so if in the scenario where Russia is bonded to Ukraine in some way, and that bond is becoming an impediment, your word is your bond. Nature doesn't look at it that way. Nature will attack the bond. Nature will attack the bond and will dissolve that bond, and for the purpose of liberation. If let's say a water molecule, hydrogen and 2 oxygen, bonded together, if the bonds are attacked, they're dissolved, and it liberates the hydrogen from the oxygen, and vice versa. This is the purpose of attack in nature. You attack a bond for liberation, but ultimately for reconstitution. And so what really needs to happen now is I'm not condoning what Russia's saying, but what I am saying is zoom out and look at it as something that is symptomatic. What is nature telling us about what's taking place right now? Well, there is some kind of bond that is a threat to Russia. A perceived threat or a real threat doesn't matter. Perception is the only thing that matters. We know that from nature as well. Perception is reality through the eyes of the perceiver. So at some level, Russia feels that it needs to attack. And so if we understand that the purpose of attack is to liberate or dissolve a bond in order to liberate the elements that are bonded together, in this case Ukraine and Russia, then what is behind that attack is the intention for surrender. For the other party to surrender, of course. And it's the same in nature. If the bond is attacked and dissolved, it's an enforced surrender. Now, if, let's say in nature, let's say that the bonding three base elements together, they are attacked and they resist the attack. They refuse to surrender. What happens? Surrender. Because the attacker is the one that surrenders. You see? If some aspect of nature is seeking to attack, then if it fails, then that means it has surrendered. You see? So, but sitting behind all of this is an unwillingness or ultimately resistance to surrender. Resistance to surrender. And, one of the reasons I'm talking about this at the moment is because we entered into an agreement with a third-party provider about 12 months ago to provide a service. And based on the environment we were in at that time, it was perfect for us. It was ideal. And in between then and now, the environment's changed radically, and this agreement that we're in is now an impediment to us moving forward in the way that we need to. So, I've said it many times, but if you're in business and you're building something, it's not architecture, it's gardening. You have to plant things, watch them grow, pull out the weeds, and observe. And you have to observe how it's growing. You have to witness the behavior, and you have to adapt to it. You have to always be prepared to, first of all, fail, but view that failure as adaptation, where you're continually adapting to the emerging truth. You're continually making new decisions based on the reality that is in front of you now. This is how nature works. And so, I'm always doing this. I'm planting seeds, I'm observing how they grow, and then using that to determine the next step and the next step. Of course, there's always a plan, but allowing that plan to zigzag and crisscross and, even go backwards in order to move forwards again. And, now we're in a scenario where the third party that we're in the agreement with, they have a global company that owns their company, who are, just using bureaucracy to say, well, these are the terms. You sign these, you agree to them. And it doesn't matter what I'm saying, where I'm saying, yeah, I understand that, but I want to reconstitute the agreement. I want to I want both parties to come together and willingly dissolve the bond together. So it's a mutual surrender for the purpose of dissolving the bond, a mutual surrender. And so notice the words that I'm using. I'm using them in a context that's relevant for how nations can resolve issues. Obviously, way different scale, but the principles are the same. It's a mutual surrender, both acknowledging that liberation from the bond is the ideal scenario. And what does that mean? It means that something new can be formed. A new bond can be formed that is beneficial to both parties. And you can go into it saying, well, I don't want to be any worse off than I was before. I don't want to have to sacrifice anything moving forward, which is totally valid. And, as long as both parties can go into it and say, I'm not prepared to sacrifice or compromise myself in any way for your benefit. And I can promise you from mediating many, this is one of my areas of expertise, is conflict resolution. And I can tell you that there is always a more expansive way forward, another option that is even more beneficial for every party involved. There is always a scenario where no sacrifice has to be made, and it always comes from collaboration, always. And to be more specific, from cooperative collaboration. And so I want to distinguish between collaboration and cooperation, because very, very important, subtle, but very, very different things. So if, let's say I'm starting a business, and this business is, I'm selling lemonade, and I need a supplier of lemons. I go to the lemon supplier and I say, I'm selling lemonade. I need a supplier. And they say, yep. How many are you likely to sell? This is how many. Okay, this is the price. You collaborate together, and that collaboration enables you to sell lemonade. You leave it to them to be the experts in providing lemons. They leave it to you to be the expert in producing lemonade. And you order what you need and you pay for it. It's a collaboration. But cooperation is very, very different. Cooperation is, rather than an exchange of goods and services for an agreed price, cooperation is saying, I'll give you the scenario in a cooperative, in the spirit of cooperation as well as collaboration. So I want to sell lemonade. I go to the lemon supplier. I say to the lemon supplier, I'm starting a new venture, selling lemonade, and I'm looking for someone to cooperate with, a collaborator to cooperate with. And they say, oh, okay, what's your business plan? What's your target market? What's the price going to be? What's the point of difference? And so notice that the reason I'm asking these questions is because I'm doing a risk assessment. I'm seeking to understand the potential risk weighed up against the opportunity for reward. So once I seek to understand that, I then do a self-analysis to say, okay, I'm a lemon supplier. Rather than just exchanging like a transaction, this is the price for this many lemons, I'm looking at what I have as an asset. My asset is that I can supply lemons, really high quality lemons, in full on time and at a really good price. That's my asset. And so my perspective now is to say, I'm prepared to invest my assets into this venture for the purpose of producing lemonade to meet a currently unmet need, for the purpose of creating a venture where the success of that venture is intrinsically linked to my success as a vendor of lemons. Now, what does this do? It has a profound impact, and I've been studying this for 2 decades at least. The nature of collaboration and cooperation, and it's very interesting. So in a transactional sense, I'm not vested in your success. All I care about is that you're going to pay my bill. So as long as you're operating, and as long as you're doing good enough to pay my bills, then that's all that matters. But I'm not vested in the sustained progress of your business. I'm not vested in helping the lemonade business to become more successful so that my assets appreciate. I'm totally dependent on the other person being successful on their own in order for my assets to be appreciated. Meaning, they place an order, I fulfill the order, they pay the bill. That's how my assets are appreciating right now. I'm taking zero responsibility and having zero influence upon, whether that bill is more and more each month. So to cooperate and to collaborate, I'm saying I'm going to invest myself into this venture, and how can we collaborate together to make this as successful as possible? And so all of a sudden, both of these parties are in the business of producing lemonade, but they're investing their own assets. And so let's say you need cups, you need disposable cups, you need a cup provider. Things that are important to you is that they're biodegradable and all the rest of it, good price. Same thing. You go to that person and you say, we're collaborating together. Most of you that know what I'm into, I call this cooperative collaboration. It's a unique form of autonomous organisation I've been developing over the years. So we're assembling a cooperative collaboration, and we're looking for someone to invest their assets into the venture and share the risk and reward with us in creating a successful lemonade business. And so, same thing. Okay, I'm prepared to invest my assets into the success of this business, but I feel like we need a strong marketing team. Agreed. Let's find a marketing company. Same thing. What are their assets? Their assets are marketing. So if they believe in their value, if they truly believe that their skills are an asset to another organization, why wouldn't they invest that asset? You see? And so over time, they assemble this entire team who are investing themselves into the success of a venture. This is what cooperative collaboration is. Anyone can collaborate. Here's my bill. Just pay my bill. If you can't pay my bill, that's a problem. We'll chase you for the money to pay the bill, even if it comes at your demise. This is the mindset of people. And they have no conscience, because they believe that they're owed that money but they have no vested interest in whether that business continues to be successful. All they care about is their bill getting paid. And this is the way most business is done now. But understand, collaboration is a buzzword at the moment, but collaboration is meaningless unless people are cooperating. And if you are someone that has a unique skill or has assets that you believe are valuable to other people, my question to you would be, would you be prepared to invest those assets into enabling someone else to be successful? And if the answer is no, then my question is, how valuable are those assets then? If you are not prepared to back yourself to provide utility to a venture, then what business do you have asking someone to pay you money for it? And this is really where the rubber hits the road, because this is the biggest bubble that exists in the entire economy. We can look at bubbles that are created by, by cryptocurrency, by false economies, by the trade of bundled financial instruments, by the stock market, by the foreign exchange market. Massive, insane bubbles of value that don't really exist. But the reality is that the economy, the way that it works, creates the biggest bubble of all. Because anyone that is going into a new venture, or even an existing venture, and the person they're seeking to do business with or collaborate with is not prepared to invest themselves into the success of your venture, then all they're doing is trading their time. They're trading their time, and they're saying, my time is worth this much, regardless of the impact that it has on your organization. My resources are worth this much, regardless of whether you can realize the potential of that product in your venture. And that's not true. That's not true. And I use this example quite a lot. If I'm dying of thirst in the desert, and there's someone walks up to me with a glass of water, someone else drives a Ferrari up to me, and I'm allowed to choose one. Am I going to choose the Ferrari or the glass of water? I'm going to choose the glass of water. The Ferrari is 1,000,000 times more valuable, but not really. I have no utility for that Ferrari. It's worthless to me because I'm about to die unless I have a drink of water. So this is an important distinction to make about value, in that when you set a price for something, you're always looking to set the price based on the demand. But the reality is that demand is in the eyes of the perceiver. If you've got a price for a lemon and it's $1 per lemon, and you try and sell me a lemon, I'm not going to buy that lemon if it's $1. If it was 10 cents, maybe I would buy it. Maybe I'd think, 10 cents for a lemon. Oh, cool, I'll go home and make myself some lemonade. But if you're in the business of selling lemonade, then that lemon could be worth $1. But this is the point I'm making. Until we are capable of building an economy that embraces collaboration and that embraces cooperation, where the participants within that economy, because it's just an ecosystem, where the participants within that economy are prepared to mutually surrender for the purpose of reconstitution then what hope is there? What hope is there if we're going to say to each other, well, regardless of this bond, you said that a year ago that you were going to do this, and a year ago it made sense. Well, are you going to keep to your word? That is utterly ridiculous, and the intelligence of nature knows that it's ridiculous and will attack a bond if there is a refusal to surrender, so that reconstitution will happen. And when that reconstitution happens, the new bonds that form are always stronger than what existed before. Always. And so, to come full circle, to look at Ukraine and Russia again, the only outcome of war, of an attack, is surrender. So who's going to surrender? Now, what really needs to happen here is to understand the bond that's in place, or the multiple bonds that are in place that are creating instability in one side. What are those bonds? And how can we get to a place of mutual surrender for the purpose of nullifying the necessity for attack, so that reconstitution can take place, understanding that neither party can be in a weaker position than what they were to begin with. Now, understand, I've been doing this for 2 decades. There's never been a scenario where there isn't an even stronger foundation as the final outcome. The willingness to dissolve the bond now, because it's no longer beneficial to both parties. Yeah, we have to be able to get to that place first. Now, if Russia is, instigating war and attacking and prepared to kill, understand that it's not happening for fun. It's happening to either mask a vulnerability or to prevent a vulnerability from having to be seen moving forward, in fear that it will be attacked. But nature doesn't care about that. Nature cares about progress, sustained progress. And any bond that's in place that is a barrier to progress will be attacked. This is how nature works. This is how nature works. Even if you look at, to use the analogy of a lion chasing a gazelle or a wildebeest, you see those scenes where there's a pack of lions and they're hunting the wildebeest in Africa. Even at this level, where there's a stampede and the lion are chasing them, then the weakest in the herd, and it's in a phenomenal, it's an astonishing phenomena, where the weakest in the herd, they actually surrender. And so you can see when something becomes unstable, the attack is always seeking to bring stability, even in context of strengthening the gene pool of the wildebeest, where the weakest is the one that is attacked, and the outcome is that the herd is stronger, and the lion gets to eat, you see. So it may seem like that individual wildebeest is worse off. In truth, that is. But the outcome of that event means greater stability, more strength. So nature is not stupid. Nature is programmed and set to create relentless, sustained progress at any cost. At any cost. And an attack is an essential part of the solution, because every atom and molecule in existence is undergoing attack in every moment for the purpose of forcing mutual surrender where there is resistance. Because a state of mutual surrender between two parties that are bonded together is liberation. It's a state of total freedom, and creates the potential to reconstitute, meaning to form new bonds that create stability and strength. And I use the word reconstitution for a reason, because any nation that has a constitution, and New Zealand is a classic example. We look at what happened in the past. We keep going back to the past, to a treaty that was signed in the 1800s, where language was a barrier, interpretation is, we still, the Māori were taken advantage of. The healings never properly happened. We've still got restitution claims happening as we speak. All of them are valid. But we have to be able to get to a point where we willingly come together and say that this is no longer serving who both parties choose to be now. How can we create something new that brings us together and creates an even stronger foundation than the one we have now for everyone involved? Let's reconstitute ourselves, and let's utilize that reconstitution. And I would even call it that, the first constitution that brings New Zealanders together. Call it the reconstitution, and make sure that all of the restitution claims that should have been done are done as part of the reconciliation of that process, so that we can reconcile it and tick them off and go, okay, by this date, all outstanding claims have to be submitted. We're going to guarantee to allocate the resources and begin that process. And, redeeming ourselves as a nation and bringing us closer together as a result. This is the way to do it. It's not without pain. And focus and resilience. But understand that unless we move towards these things, unless we look at the pain where it exists now and see it as symptomatic, look at issues like racism and poverty and prejudice and violence and protests. Unless we look at these things and view them as symptomatic of an underlying need to reconstitute ourselves in some way, to dissolve bonds that exist, and so that we can come back together and reconstitute ourselves in a way that dissolves the pain, in a way that enables us all to move beyond where we are now in a positive way without having to sacrifice anything, then we're never really going to be able to heal from anything collectively. We had protests here in our capital city in Wellington, and people were, camped out on the front lawn of Parliament for quite a while. I think, possibly a couple of weeks even, 10 days, something like that. And it escalated and it got violent. And on the news, it's our Prime Minister is saying it's shameful, and this whole thing of this is not who we are comes out again. On social media, I look on LinkedIn and people are saying this isn't who we are. And it was the same with the Christchurch killings. People on their Facebook, this is not who we are. Yes, it is. It's exactly who we are. It's right in front of our faces. To say that this isn't who we are is to just ignore the problem. Because these problems they'll keep festering. Just because there aren't people, the police have cleared them out now and done all the arrests and all the rest of it. Just because there aren't people camping out at Parliament anymore doesn't mean the problem's gone away. It's symptomatic of something underlying. What is that? The Prime Minister just invalidates these people's perspectives and tries to make them feel like outcasts and not on board with everyone else. And so everyone else starts guilting and shaming these people just because they're confused and afraid and scared, and because they don't trust the authorities anymore. Whether they're right or wrong is irrelevant. They've evolved and adapted and become who they are now to perceive the world in the way that they do now because they're a part of our society. The fact that they don't trust in the authorities, it doesn't matter why. All that matters is how can we resolve it? How can we imbue trust back into the system? How can we put more checks and balances in place on authorities? How can we set up a mechanism for people to challenge that authority in a meaningful way, in a way that's guaranteed to be actioned and at least reconciled? Because in that process of those authorities being able to say, well, you questioning that authority was valid. We've completed an audit. These are the findings. And the results of these findings show that, yes, we were correct in our assessment. And the fact that, that's not a wasted exercise. Because the person who was fearful of and mistrusting of the authority in the beginning has now reached a place of trust. They'll feel slightly embarrassed. Oh, you guys were right. I'm sorry, I apologize. You did look at all the evidence. You did listen to what I was saying. You did factor in the evidence of this group of people over here. And I can see now that you did factor it in, but you saw that it was inconsequential or whatever it may be. So I appreciate you investing in me to get us both into a position of harmony. Doesn't matter who's right or wrong. All that matters is reconciliation and reconstitution. I was fearful. I am now at peace. And I now trust. And I think as a nation, all nations really, we need to be able to get to a place where the people understand that authority is not top down. The government doesn't give us authority, you see. And I think it's really important, and it really needs to come into the schools, that people need to understand this, that authority is the privilege to govern is granted to the government by the people. And so, they're called public servants for a reason. And it's because they're there to serve the people. So the people, how it works is we can revoke that privilege any time that we choose. There's no clear mechanism for it, obviously, but this is how authority works, is that it's delegated. And so the people are actually above the government, and we don't see it that way because most people don't understand how it works. But when you're born, when your parent signs your birth certificate, because they're your legal guardian, and so they're like your signatory. They're an agent on behalf of you until you're deemed as legally responsible enough to make your own decisions. So when they sign the birth certificate, they're surrendering the ultimate authority to the government, and it is total authority over your body, and over your birth certificate becomes a financial instrument in the form of a bond that has the potential to generate revenue for that government long term. So it's an asset in their custodianship. And so they really, I mean, they don't do it well, but they're meant to. The reason it's set up this way is so that they're vested in your success. If they can help you to generate wealth for yourself in your own life, and that means you're meeting the unmet needs of other parts of society, and it means you're a valuable asset to the government. So it is set up well, but for whatever reason, this has been lost over time and lost in translation big time. You know, the original intent behind this mechanism, you know, there's lots of conspiracy theories people talk about that, you know, they talk about the straw man and, oh, you're a straw man, and, you know, the legal person doesn't really exist. You're a living, breathing human being, and those things are true. But you need to understand the people that established this structure and mechanism, they did it so they could turn human beings into assets that could be appreciated by a government. So that, you know, the wealth of the government was dependent upon the ability for them to enable the assets, or the human beings, to generate wealth. And, you know, wealth has become a dirty word, but we, you know, lots of poor people look at rich people with disdain and hatred even. It's like it's something to be embarrassed about or ashamed of if you're wealthy. But people are wealthy because they're meeting an unmet need of someone else in society. So wealthy people are extraordinarily valuable to the economy. And, you know, yes, they're using capitalism, and I think capitalism has almost run its course. It's been really effective for us and enabled us to, you know, enter a new epoch. But there's another epoch coming, and that epoch is delegated authority, or distributed authority, sovereign decision making, but cooperative collaboration. And, you know, just to bring this full circle again, to link this back to, you know, human beings being assets of the government. Cooperative collaboration means, here's an example. If I have a company, if I'm the provider of the lemons for the lemonade company, and I'm in a cooperative collaboration, so my success is inherently linked to the success of the lemonade venture. This is the magic key. Because if I'm the supplier of the lemons to that venture, instead of worrying about whether I can, you know, the lemons are delivered on time to the factory, when I'm lying in bed at night, I'm thinking of ways for the lemonade venture to be successful. I'm thinking of other ways, more creative ways, for the business to be even more successful, so that I sell more lemons. And so in that scenario, what the lemon supplier has is they actually have an intangible asset. And that intangible asset is an entitlement to royalties from sales. And so you say to the lemon supplier, if you're willing to invest yourself into this venture, I'll exchange it for a royalty entitlement to sales. Every time I sell some lemonade, you receive X percentage of every sale. And so in the beginning, all you have to invest is this many lemons, a dozen lemons to make our first crate. We sell that first crate and you receive 50% of every sale until we sell that first crate. And once we sell that first crate, we agree to invest the profits in producing more. When we sell those, we share a percentage of sales. And this is how you organically grow a business, where everyone shares the risk and the reward together. You see, the lemon supplier is not losing out in this scenario. They're putting at risk the first 12 lemons, and all they have to lose is that 12 lemons if that lemonade doesn't sell. And this, for me, until people are willing to back themselves in a marketplace, we're not going to see a radical departure from where it is now, which is highly inefficient, extraordinarily fragmented. It's diseased, really. There's not energy doesn't flow through it the way that it should. People are incentivized to stockpile assets. People are incentivized to create a sense of false scarcity. Value is, entire industries are built on the speculation of opinion leaders. It's just a house of cards. If you look at it, it's just a train wreck. It is just a train wreck. And what happens is nations, they increase the money supply to hide these things. They increase the money supply to hide these things, and then manipulate interest rates to control how much disposable income people have. They use interest rates as a way to reduce demand in an economy that's absolutely cranking. Now, that is seriously screwed up. They deliberately make it harder for you to pay your mortgage so that demand for other goods and services and other industries decreases. So they deliberately make your life harder for you in order to cool down piping hot markets. Just think about that for a second. It's deliberate. It's intentional to make you struggle to pay your mortgage in order to control the economy. Now, when you really wrap your head around that's unacceptable. But it's not enough to say that it's unacceptable. We need to have solutions, and we need to create solutions, and we need to experiment with those solutions, fail at them, adapt, evolve, get better at them, refine them, and use them, and demonstrate it. We have to demonstrate a new way. We can't leave it to the custodians of an existing system to make those changes. We have to demonstrate that change ourselves. So, what is the purpose of attack? It's to create surrender. What's the purpose of that surrender? Is to liberate for the purpose of reconstitution, so that something even better, so that even better bonds can be formed in this moment that suit everyone involved. So how can we? How can we? And if you ever are in a situation where you're feeling attacked in future, or if you notice yourself trying to attack someone else, once it's cooled down, once you've averted, the attack, or once the dust settles, just ask yourself, what is the vulnerability that's being protected here? What is the instability within this scenario that is seeking to become stable? And how can we reconstitute the bonds that exist in a new way that creates that stability? It's the nature of every atom and molecule in this reality is always in the process of becoming more or less stable. So we have to be able to work with this rather than resist it. Reconstitution is essential. And integrity has nothing to do with what you said that you were going to do 12 months ago. Integrity has to do with how structurally sound you are now. If you look at a building and it's about to fall over, you don't look into the past and say, well, it was agreed that we would use these building blocks in 1950. What you do is you look at it and you say, as of right now, this building has no integrity. It did have integrity for the last 50 years. But in this now moment, it doesn't have integrity. Integrity is about the robustness that's in front of us now. It's not about promises that were made in the past. It's about recognizing that when those promises were made, they were valid, and there was stability in that moment. And in this now moment, there is instability, and therefore the structural integrity is compromised. So how can we reconstitute to form solid bonds and foundations that will catapult us into the future? And how can we do that now? And if everyone can come into that from the perspective of seeking mutual surrender, that will initiate the liberation from the bonds that exist now and create the space for reconstitution, where the slate's wiped entirely clean and we say, how can we create everything that we want and more now? And how can we link ourselves together in a cooperative collaboration so that our mutual success is linked to each other's. Our individual success is linked to each other's success. So we're vested in each other. Okay, so that's it for now. I'll leave it there. This one has been the nature of attack. Cheers for now.